I'm Stacey Brown, and I've been in the insurance industry now for over 20 years. Yeah, kind of an interesting story how I started that. I'll get to that in a little bit. But I've always been in the insurance technology side of the house. And over the 20 years, I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of different parts of the business as a technology guy, right? The underwriting side, the claims side, finance, operations, all different parts of the business. So I've had that opportunity to see how it all works. And I'm happy to be here today to give you some insights into what types of careers and things look like inside an insurance company. I also have some experience outside in entrepreneurial land through work that I've done with an organization called InsurTech Hartford. And I'm hoping to share some insights on that for those who might be interested in entrepreneurship.
Hi, I'm Myra, and I am studying accounting and business administration at Manchester Community College, and I've been working with InsurTech Hartford for over the past year.
Great. Well, Myra, you've over the last year, it's been great working with you. And, what are some of the opportunities that you've had and things that you've seen just, working closely with the insurance industry?
Well, one of the biggest opportunities I'm really thankful for is the traveling aspect. I've gotten to go to Vegas and New York City. When I go to these conferences, my biggest interest is the marketing side. So I like seeing how the different booths are set up, the promotional items that they give out. And one time when I was at one of the booths, there was like a spin the wheel, and I happened to win a Yeti, which was really cool. Also, a really cool part about traveling and going to these conferences is the entertainment. Like last year, when I got to go to ITC Vegas, I got to see Ludacris in concert poolside. So that was really cool.
That is really cool. Definitely cool. So,
and Stacey, with the 20 years in the IT insurance industry, what opportunities have you experienced?
Well, I could talk about that kind of from the two different lenses. One from the corporate side, right? So as I mentioned in my opening comments, 20 years now, I've worked in the industry and I've had the opportunity to interact and work with many different parts of the business. And, there are jobs in claims and underwriting. And I think those are things that easily come to mind. You don't have to know anything about insurance to know that there's probably jobs in claims and underwriting. But at the end of the day, insurance is really a technology and data-driven industry. Everything we do is based off of data-driven decisions. So there's a lot of functions, not just in technology, but also on the business side. For example, finance, right? Finance relies a lot on data. And there's a lot of different types of roles in finance. And I'm not necessarily an expert on it, but I know that, for example, what a lot of people don't realize is that a big portion of the profits that an insurance company makes is from the investment returns on what they call reserves, which is basically, think of it as like a big savings account for all the future claims that the company expects to pay. And so there's a lot of functions around just investing and managing the investments, moving the money around between the accounts, and there's a lot of portfolio management, portfolio risk management type of functions also that happen in finance. But every insurance company also has a pretty good size operations division. And like the company that I work for right now, more than half the company is just between finance and operations people. So, operations roles, these are the folks that, if everything is tech and data driven, how does that data get into the systems, right? A lot of it is that. And then in terms of making data-driven decisions and getting the data out of the systems, that is also where a lot of operations people get involved. Operations people will also help, produce the documents and and things like that that are necessary when issuing a policy. So there's a lot of different roles within operations itself. So and then on the legal side, there's a lot of compliance and regulatory matters to be interfacing with folks like the Connecticut Department of Insurance and other regulator bodies. And then some companies are multinational, and that also means that there are opportunities outside of the United States for some of these companies to do some of these functions. But so that's a lot of what I've seen on the corporate side. On the entrepreneur side, there's a whole nother world of opportunities out there. And the entrepreneur side isn't as much in a box, right? So if you enter a corporate role and you're going to enter a finance job, there's going to be a title, there's going to be roles and responsibilities. And you do get that on the entrepreneur side as well. But usually people in startup companies are wearing many hats, right? So your main function might be, as a pricing actuary, but that doesn't mean that you don't help with sales and marketing somehow, or you don't help with, with the technology side of the house, right? That like people will tend to have to be more flexible, and those types of environments are usually a lot more fast paced than what you get in the corporate environments. The corporate environments tend to be more governance driven. And, I think one of the main reasons for that is like when you're a startup, you pretty much have nothing to lose and everything to gain. But once you're like a large insurance company with like billions of dollars of assets, you've got a lot to gain, a lot to lose, and not as much to gain, relatively speaking. So startups take more risks, they move faster. So it kind of depends, which environment is right for people as they're entering the industry. Kind of depends on, how they feel about it and what they're interested in. But, definitely over 20 years, I've seen a lot of change in the industry. The way we do things today is not the same that we used to do things 20 years ago when I started. And again, tech and data keeps having bigger and bigger amounts of influence, and the trends will continue. Now, with all that said, speaking of trends, Myra, I was just curious. So you mentioned that about how you've gotten to go to some of these conferences and travel and stuff. But when you attend these conferences, have you, attended any speaking sessions, and do you hear people talking about different trends and things that might be creating opportunities for graduating students in the future?
Yeah, at the conferences, I hear a lot of conversations about climate change, and there's two big things that you gotta think about when dealing with climate change. One of them is how to deal with the current impacts of climate change. So like the storms, the flooding, the droughts that we've been having recently. And the second thing is, what can we do today to minimize future climate change? So for example, reducing carbon footprint. There are many opportunities for everyone in the insurance industry, no matter what your background is or your degree.
Yeah, definitely. Climate is a hot topic in the industry. And I'll expand a little bit on what you were saying there, because somebody might be thinking, well, what does insurance have to do with climate? Well, to the points you were making about how we respond to, storms and floods and fires, like unless you haven't turned on the TV in the last 5 years, you've probably heard a lot about how intensity is increasing on all these things. And so, as I mentioned, the insurance industry is very data driven, right? The decisions we make today are based off historical data. But when that historical data doesn't seem to be holding up as well anymore, people start trying to figure out what that means. So there's a lot of work being done in the industry right now around looking at the models that we rely on and trying to figure out how to account for climate change, because quite frankly, they don't account for climate change today. And definitely we are dealing with the impacts of climate change. And so in order for the insurance industry to exist, it's got to make sure that it's being priced according to the level of risk that exists. So there's, again, a lot of work going in the industry right now to look at how we traditionally underwrite insurance and the trends of what's changing because of climate. And so that definitely is that. Now, on the flip side, Myra, you also mentioned about, what do we do today to minimize the effects of climate change in the future? And the example you gave there was, reducing carbon footprint. And that's a great example. And an example of how insurance contributes to that would be, for example, there are a number of large global carriers who have said, we are no longer going to insure new oil field drilling projects. So what does that mean for the future? Well, if relying less on oil is something we want to do in order to reduce our carbon footprint, this is a very effective measure, because what it essentially means is that the oil, the companies that go out drilling for oil, they have to take more of the risk on themselves. And the way that these kinds of projects work is to finance them, they've got to raise the capital. And if there's more risk involved in the project, then the cost of capital is going to go higher, which now, as the cost of drilling new oil fields increases, it's going to drive people out of drilling these projects. And for those that do, it's going to become more expensive. And all this means that the future of oil prices will continue to increase as availability of new supply goes down and costs of drilling for oil go up. And so that's going to create more incentive for alternate energy, for industrial and transportation and the things that we use oil for today. So just by making a policy level decision, like we are not going to insure new drilling projects, insurers are actually making a huge contribution towards the future of reducing CO2 footprint. Sorry if that was kind of a long answer, but I thought it was a good observation that you made, and I just thought to tie that together, right? How insurance and climate change actually fit. And there's a lot of examples, and I won't get into any more of them. But in summary, the insurance industry. I told you I'd tell you my story about how I got in, and pretty much it wasn't something I set out to do. I did not go to school saying I want to be in insurance. And if you talk to 100 people in insurance, 95 of them will probably tell you the same thing. There are those that went to school to be actuaries, or knew that they wanted to do work in risk management. So they most likely knew early on that this was the career they wanted. But for the vast majority of people in the industry, it just crosses our path. The .com crash happened in 2001, and I needed a job. So I had a friend that was working for a large carrier, and he said, well, send me your resume. And I was like, I don't want to work for an insurance company. But I went in for the interview. I looked at the paycheck. I looked at the benefits, and I thought, well, why not try? And now here it is 20 years later. I love the insurance industry. It has very holistic purposes in terms of helping the world advance, making sure that the underprivileged have access to healthcare and other things like that. It does a lot of good for the world. And just to put something into perspective for you, the global insurance premiums exceed $5.5 trillion. And what that means is if you were to look at countries and sort them by gross domestic product, GDP, if insurance was a country, it'd be the fourth largest economy in the world, right? So insurance is a massive industry. There's tons of opportunity. It's an industry that's faced with challenges today as a lot of people are retiring out of it, which means with more people leaving than coming in, that means the people that are coming in are going to have more opportunity, faster growth and advancement and things of that sort that probably traditionally happened. And, I mentioned about how talk to 100 people, 95 of them would say, I didn't set out to be in insurance. But here they are. They stay in insurance. A lot of people, when they get in the industry, they realize the work we're doing is good work. The people are good people. The paychecks are great. The benefits are great. The opportunities to do things like travel to conferences and stuff is pretty cool. So you don't hear a lot of cool factor to insurance, but actually there's a lot of coolness under the covers. So hopefully as students, you'll think further and explore further about opportunities in insurance. I think you'll find that the barriers to entry are not as high as you might think, especially as college students who are planning to graduate. I think that gives you a leg up in being able to enter the industry. And if there's anything that you'd like to know, or if I can help you in any way, just ping me on LinkedIn. It's a great way to find me, and I really appreciate how the Connecticut Department of Insurance has put this together, focusing on next generation talent, and I also appreciate the fact that they invited me to be here to speak to you, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Hope to see you guys soon at some conferences.